We have a major announcement in world reserve currency update this week with France trading LNG using Yuan, not using US dollars, which is a major move. This episode, we're going to talk about the last year pipelines, Taiwan, 3 aircraft carriers being put there. We're going to talk about the inverted yield curve and my predictions with Bitcoin, gold, what's happening in the silver markets, precious metal markets, how they've been manipulated prior to this, how all this comes together potentially to see. A lot of people are out there saying the world reserve currency is going to get disrupted. Others are saying it's still intact. We're going to see at least where I land on that in this episode. All right, so to catch up to speed, this week, major news right here from Reuters. China completes the first UN-settled LNG, which stands for liquefied natural gas trade, with France. Okay, I got some LaCroix here. Come on, France. Why? Why France? Why would France break the Bretton Woods Agreement to trade large amounts of oil not using US dollars? And let me take you back a little bit, a little history lesson. 1946, we had the Bretton Woods Agreement. The United States comes with all these nations after World War II and says, we will pay for a navy and we'll protect the entire world as long as you trade with us. And everyone's like, where do we sign up? This is the greatest deal of all time. They said, yeah, let's just trade. Let's be trading partners. We'll help each other's countries out. We don't want land. We don't want territory. We don't want anything. Because they could have claimed a lot of stuff. They said, we don't want any of that. All we want you to do is trade with us. Oh, and by the way, you have to trade with us using US dollars. And ta-da, a new world reserve currency was set. And since then, we've been on the US dollar. And a lot of people call it the petrodollar, meaning all large amounts of oil around the world are traded in US dollars. So if you're in Germany and you're buying oil from Saudi Arabia, you don't use euros or whatever other currency, you use United States dollars through the SWIFT system. You convert those dollars and ta-da, you can go buy oil. So last March, right here on the Wall Street Journal, it says that Saudi Arabia is considering using yuan to trade large amounts of oil with China. Now, let me take you through the timeline of what happened last year after this announcement. Because by the way, you can trace almost every major war conflict the United States has been in is really tied to oil and or money and financial markets. Not using the US dollar to trade oil is a big deal. I know of 3 people that have decided to trade large amounts of oil without using US dollars. Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, Saddam Hussein, both those guys kind of ended up getting killed by the United States government. Now, most recent, we have another guy named Vladimir Putin. And ta-da, guess what happened? We had this kind of Ukraine thing. The US, NATO kind of baited Russia, in my opinion, baited them into a war. They went into this war and the United States is now backing Russia like crazy. We're giving them tanks and drones, whatever they need until Biden says the conflict is finished. We are going to work with Ukraine. So again, March of 2022, almost a year ago, this statement comes out. What happens next? In June, the Fed starts quantitative tightening. We start raising rates and issuing bonds to pull back money supply from the markets. And ta-da, the Fed defies gravity again. Right now we have high inflation, right? Well, guess what? The US dollar is also going up in value. The yuan during that same time period gets decimated. Rubles, euros all get decimated compared to the dollar. You would think economics textbook says if you have high inflation, the currency should go down in value. That's the definition of inflation, is devaluing of a currency. Well, not in this case. We've had high inflation and also our currency is going up in value. All a currency is valued at is compared to other currencies. That's all a currency is good for. You can compare it to orange juice, compared to barrels of oil, compared to ounces of gold, compared to the yuan, compared to the euro, whatever currency you want to use. The US dollar in the last year has gone up in value according to the DXY, which measures this whole comparison. Please find me an economics textbook that says when you have high inflation, oh, also your currency will rise in power. But I digress. Let me go back. So this is June of 2022. We do quantitative tightening. By July, we are already seeing a conflict with China over Taiwan. Now, the US has 11 aircraft carriers. The combined world has half of the deck space that we have with 11 aircraft carriers. That's how much power we can project around the world. Now, by the way, when an aircraft carrier leaves port, it goes with like 15 other ships. They have submarines, they have battleships. It's like a whole fleet that leaves port together. So back to China and Taiwan. So during that time period, we went and parked an aircraft carrier between China and Taiwan. And China was still flying airplanes around doing crazy stuff. So we went ahead and parked a second aircraft carrier next to Taiwan. 2 of our 11 were parked right by Taiwan. Things kept heating up. We then parked a third aircraft carrier near the South China Sea and around Taiwan to protect the region. Then Biden came out and said, we will defend Taiwan at all costs. And then all of a sudden, everything kind of cools down, right? The whole thing kind of debunkles. At the same time, the United States announces they are banning all chip manufacturing in China. At the same time, they pass a $54 billion CHIPS Act in the United States to develop fab facilities in the United States. Intel right now is developing a 1,000-acre site in Ohio. They have other sites going up in Phoenix and around the country to build chip manufacturing in the United States. Oh, and by the way, there's another $280 billion that can be unlocked for that CHIPS bill in the next 6 months to build more infrastructure in the United States. A lot of people call chip manufacturing the new oil, and we're now severing China from this and putting them back, a lot of people say 5 to 7 years on chip manufacturing. Around the same month, last August, there's a mysterious pipeline blows up in Russia, the Nord Stream pipeline. Underwater explosives go off. We come to find out a submarine had to go and do an underwater thing to put those explosives there. And last month, a Nobel-winning prize journalist comes out and says it was the United States who blew up that pipeline. Now, a lot of people blamed Russia for this pipeline blow up, but why would Russia blow up their own pipeline they spent $2 billion putting into place? Could it have been the United States? And this reporter comes out and says, has this whole detailed article on how it was the United States and how they did it, the time they did it, when they were in the South China Sea. This whole thing is a Nobel Prize winning journalist that comes out and says all this. Pretty interesting, right? And ta-da, look what happens. About 6 months later, almost all of Europe is dependent on United States LNG, liquefied natural gas. Huge win for the United States. And as of right now, the United States does not seem like they want to negotiate peace with Russia. We are aiding and abetting Ukraine and giving them tanks and anything they need, drones, whatever they want. We're giving out all of our old ammunition to them to help dump. It's pretty interesting what's going on. Now, fast forward through 2023, we've now had a handful of banks blow up. We've had SVB, Silvergate, Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank, across the board. All these banks are trying to blow up because of bond rates that they bought are plummeting, and bond values that they're trying to liquidate are 40 or 50% below market value when they bought them. Additionally, we've got the 3 and 10-year yield curves inverted to the highest level they've been in 3 decades, which many analysts say is one of the best indicators for a recession, just spiked to the highest levels it's been. Which brings us to about right now. You have Bullish coming out and saying that he believes crypto is going to be $1 million in the next 90 days because of the devaluing of currencies. You've got Robert Kiyosaki, other people saying that gold and silver are going to take off, etc. And then you actually have France right here, our friends LaCroix, trading liquefied natural gas using Yuan. Now that's a major shift. Now, what does this all boil into? A lot of people keep asking me, Bridger, what's your thoughts on world reserve currency? Where are we at in this whole cycle of things? Now, I always remember the 3 rules of investing. Don't fight the Fed, don't fight the Fed, don't fight the Fed. I believe the Fed is the most powerful organization on planet Earth. They will put trade embargoes on you. They will park aircraft carriers around your country if you do not want to use US dollars and their world reserve currency. I know the Fed talks about their job is to fight inflation and jobs and stuff, but ultimately the number one job of the Fed is to protect their greatest product they've ever produced of all time. And that product is US dollars. I love my dad will say this, right? Because they print 1 trillion of them, and then people like us work 80 hours a week. We run around, we fly around the world to get more dollars. And then they print another 1 trillion of them, and we run around the world, we do crazy stuff. We work 80 hours a week to get another dollar. They print another 1 trillion, and we want more. It's the best selling product on planet Earth. And if you're the world reserve currency, you got to make sure people are using your product. And if they don't want to use their product, Saudi Arabia, well, maybe we'll just remove our aircraft carrier that's protecting your shores. Or Russia, we'll just blow up one of your pipelines. Additionally, a lot of people criticize President Biden for coming in and shutting down the Keystone pipeline. Remember, he took office, shut down the Keystone pipeline? Because when Trump was in office, we had like the cheapest gas of all time. Why would Biden shut down the Keystone pipeline? Well, think about how this relates to oil and the dollar. If we're getting our own pipeline from Alberta, Canada, and it comes in and we just use that, Saudi Arabia doesn't need to use US dollars. They don't need to buy and borrow more dollars. When we shut down the pipeline, it makes us transact with Saudi Arabia. And because we want them to use US dollars for their transactions and them to be dependent on us. A lot of people criticize the national debt is so high. I can't believe how much debt the United States is in. Well, guess what? That debt is denominated in US dollars. It's not denominated in Bitcoin. It's not denominated in euros. It's not denominated in yuan. It's denominated in US dollars. So if China wants to get off the world reserve currency of US dollars, they want to use the yuan or something else, they're going to have to, let's just say, for example, they have $1 trillion. We owe them in dollars. Well, if they're going to get off dollars and devalue the dollar, they're going to have to take $1 trillion loss because they're going to devalue the currency that the debt is owed in. You want debt all over the world spread out, denominated in US dollars. Now, I know a lot of people out there like gold is gonna go to the moon or crypto. Let me just share a few examples. So right here on the screen, you see JP Morgan Chase was fined $920 million for manipulating the price of gold for about a decade. This whole judgment came out in 2022. I believe they were discovered in 2019, but a private company was manipulating the price of gold, a $12 trillion asset, one of the largest asset classes in the world. A private company manipulated that market for 10 years. Because I agree with all these people that follow the math and stuff. Like when you have high inflation, the currency should go down. But guess what? The currency has gone up in value. When all this stuff, gold should be going up. Gold should be $5,000 an ounce. I agree. It should be according to the book. Well, it's not. Bitcoin should be $1 million a coin. It's not, because potentially someone like JP Morgan is manipulating the market. So let me just ask you a question. Is it possible the United States could have learned what JP Morgan Chase did? Could they, the most powerful, biggest, baddest institution of all time, the Fed, could they take that same scenario here where they use the futures market, they use trading volume to spoof a market? Could they take that same thing to Bitcoin? Could they take the same thing to the euro or to the Yuan to devalue these currencies in an inflationary period to make their currency go up? Is it possible? I'm not saying it is, but is it possible? A private company did it with a $12 trillion market cap. Crypto's only $1 trillion. Gold's 12 trillion. Is it possible? Because I come back to this, the number one job of the Fed is to protect US dollars. Now, a lot of people out there, oh, it's time for it to change. Now, I think there's two scenarios that could happen. Number one is the US resets its currency. I actually think they are setting the groundwork for a central bank digital currency. Last November, banking giants of the New York Fed started a 12-week digital dollar pilot. This was Citigroup, Wells Fargo. They actually already did and have completed a test of a 12-week digital dollar. Last year, President Biden puts out an executive order to go out and research a potential central bank digital currency. So you got a test of a 12-week digital dollar. You got an executive order put out for central bank digital currencies. You got them building $54 billion of chip manufacturing, another $280 billion to go and build data centers and fab facilities and all kind of stuff to, I think, house a central bank digital currency. So number one, I think it's very possible they could come out and reset their currency. Now, the second option here is what I think also could happen. A lot of people write books and stuff and they say, oh yeah, the world is just gonna turn over. We'll all just start using another currency. Well, where are you gonna go? What currency are you gonna use? You're gonna use the Yuan? You're gonna let China and Russia, the two communist countries that have killed millions of people, that have a social credit system, you want them to run your currency? Okay, maybe. Do you want euros? The euro's been decimated to the dollar. You really want to use euros? Do you want to use bitcoins? Maybe, right? Or a currency that's not controlled by anybody? Maybe. But do you really think the country who has the most nukes, the most guns, the biggest weapon systems, the most aircraft carriers, do you think that country is just going to say, yeah, you know what? Use somebody else's currency, no big deal? When historically, every war we have fought since World War II, you can find how it relates and affects currency and oil. Every war we've been into directly affects currency and oil. Interesting. I believe the United States would rather go to World War III than let go of the world reserve currency. We'll go kill Muammar Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Vladimir Putin. We'll have wars with Taiwan and China over this one thing. That's how important the petrodollar is. And by the way, we don't want that to happen. If you're watching this, you are in a country where you don't want that to happen. If that turns over, if the world reserve currency was changed, your value of your real estate, the company you work for, every company that's here, YouTube itself would be totally turned upside down. All the people in power with all the guns, all the nukes, all the control of the world would be totally flipped on its head. The rebellion person in me is like, yeah, it'd be awesome. It'd be so cool. But really, do you really want that to happen? Do you really think the people in power are going to say, yeah, we're good. Let's just lose all of our power for free. You guys just go do your own thing. I believe it would be a fight to the death. And it might be a huge world conflict if this really starts heating up. Because historically, the United States government and the Fed has gone to every length possible to make sure that their currency is used around the world. Now, if you want to learn more about this, we are doing Fund Launch Live here in a few months. If you guys want to grab tickets, we're going to talk all about this in depth. We've got Jim Rogers, John Pennington, a bunch of other major people that are way smarter than me coming to talk about this very same subject. If you guys are interested, grab tickets down below. Let me know down below in the comments. Please like and subscribe if you like this video. Let more people see it. Share it to other friends if you get their take on it. I'm curious your guys' thoughts, actually. This is why I'm just one guy making an opinion out here. I'm curious to see how it's going to play out, though. It's going to be very interesting watching all this economic data. So you're amazing. Thank you so much. Hit down below. I'll see you guys later. Bye.